waiting in front of the proconsular building, and it is strange to see so many people in that place and its neighborhood while the rest of the town seems to be empty. Jesus sees the shepherds in a group, and they're all there. That is Isaac, Jonathan, Levi, Joseph, Elias, Matthias, John, Simeon, Benjamin, and Daniel, together with a small group of Galileans, among whom I recognize Alphaeus and Joseph of Alphaeus, with two or more whom I do not know, but judging by their hairstyle, I should say they are Judeans. And farther away he sees John, who has slipped into the hall, half hidden behind a column, with a Roman, who I think is a servant. He smiles at this one and at those, his friends. But what are these few people, and Johanna, and Manaen, and Chusa, in the middle of an ocean boiling with hatred? The centurion salutes Pontius Pilate and reports, "Here again? Phew! Cursed be this race. Make the mob come forward and bring the accused here." Oh, what a nuisance! He goes towards the crowd, stopping again in the middle of the hall. "Jews, listen. You have brought me this man as an instigator of the people. I have examined him in your presence, and I have not found in him any of the crimes of which you accuse him. Herod did not find more than I did, and he has sent him back to us. He does not deserve death. Rome has spoken. But in order not to displease you, depriving you of your amusements, I will give you Barabbas, and I will order him to be given 40 lashes. That is enough." "No, no, not Barabbas, not Barabbas. Death to Jesus, and a dreadful death. Release Barabbas, and condemn the Nazarene to death." "But listen, I said I will have him lashed. Is that not enough? I will have him scourged. Then, it is terrible, you know. He may die through it. What wrong has he done? I can find no fault in him, and I will set him free." "Crucify him! Crucify him! Death to him! You are the protector of criminals. Heathen, you are Satan too." The crowd advances, and the first formation of soldiers wavers, as they cannot make use of their lances, but the second line, descending one step, swing their lances and free their companions. "Let him be scourged," Pilate orders the centurion. "How many blows?" "As many as you like. In any case, the matter is over, and I'm bored. Go." Jesus is led by 4 soldiers to the courtyard beyond the hall. In the middle of that courtyard, which is all paved with colored marbles, there is a high column like the one in the porch, at about 3 meters from the floor. It has an iron bar protruding at least a meter, and ending with a ring to which Jesus is tied, with his hands joined above his head, after he has been undressed. He has on only short linen drawers and sandals. His hands tied at his wrists are raised up as far as the ring, so that, although tall, he rests only the tips of his toes on the floor, and even that position is a torture. I have read, I do not know where, that the column was low and that Jesus was bent over it. That may be. I say what I see. Behind him stands one who looks like an executioner, with a clear Jewish profile. In front of him, another man, looking like the previous one. They are armed with scourges made of 7 leather strips, tied to a handle, and ending with small lead hammers. They begin to strike him rhythmically, as if they were practicing, one in front and one behind, so that Jesus' trunk is in a whirl of lashes and scourges. The 4 soldiers to whom he has been handed are indifferent, and are playing dice with the other 3 soldiers who have just arrived. And the voices of the players follow the rhythm of the sound of the scourges, which hiss like snakes, and then resounds like stones striking the stretched skin of a drum. They beat the poor body, which is so slender and as white as old ivory, and then becomes covered with stripes that at first are a brighter and brighter pink shade, then violet, then it displays blue swellings, full of blood. Then the skin breaks, letting blood flow from all sides. They redouble their cruelty on his thorax and abdomen, but there is no shortage of blows given to his legs, arms, and even to his head, so that no fragment of his skin may be left without pain. And not a moan. If he were not held up by the rope, he would fall, but he does not fall, and does not groan. Only his head hangs over his chest, after so many blows, as if he had fainted. "Hey, stop! He must be alive when he is killed, shouts the soldier scoffingly. The two executioners stop and wipe their perspiration. We are exhausted, they say. Give us our pay so that we may have a refreshing drink. I would give you the gallows, but here you are, and the decurion throws a large coin to each executioner. You have done a good job. He looks like a mosaic. Titus, do you mean that this man was really Alexander's love? We must let him know, so that he may mourn over his death. Let us untie him. They untie him, and Jesus falls on the floor like a dead body. They leave him there, pushing him now and again with their feet shod with caligulae, to see whether he moans, but he is silent. Is he dead? Is it possible? He is a young man and has a handicraftsman, so I am told, and he looks like a delicate lady. I will take care of him, says the soldier, and he sits him with his back against the column. Clots of blood appear where he was. He then goes towards a fountain, gurgling under the porch. He fills a tub with water and pours it on Jesus' head and body. That's it. Water is good for flowers. Jesus draws a deep sigh and tries to stand up, but his eyes are still closed. Oh, good. Come on, darling. Your dame is waiting for you. But Jesus in vain presses his hands against the floor, trying to stand up. Come on, quick. Are you weak? Here is some refreshment, says another soldier sneeringly, and with the shaft of his halberd he delivers a blow to Jesus' face, striking it between the right cheekbone and the nose, that begins to bleed. Jesus opens his eyes and looks round. His eyes are veiled. He stares at the soldier who struck him, wipes the blood with his hand, and then with much effort he stands up. Get dressed. It is immodest to stay like that, you lewd man. They all laugh, standing around him, and he obeys without speaking. But when he bends, and he alone knows how much he suffers when stooping to the ground, contused as he is, and his wounds open even more when the skin is stretched, and more are formed as the blisters burst. A soldier gives a kick to his garments and scatters them, and every time Jesus reaches them, staggering to where they lie, a soldier pushes them away or throws them in a different direction, and Jesus, suffering bitterly, goes after them without uttering a word, while the soldiers deride him obscenely. He can dress himself again at last, and he can put on also the white tunic which was left in a corner, and is still clean. He seems to wish to conceal his poor red garment, which only yesterday was so beautiful, and now is filthy with rubbish, and stained with the blood sweated at Gethsemane. Furthermore, before putting on his short vest, he dries his wet face with it, cleaning it of dust and spittles. And the poor, holy face looks clean, marked only by bruises and small cuts, and he tidies his hair, which is hanging ruffled, and his beard, out of an inborn need to be personally tidy. Then he squats in the sunshine, because my Jesus is shivering. Fever begins to torture him with its cold shivers, and he feels weak because of the blood he has lost, of fasting and walking so much. They tie his hands once again, and the rope begins to cut into his wrists, where the excoriated skin has left a mark like a red bracelet. And now, what shall we do with him? I'm bored. Wait, the Jews want a king. Now we will give them one. Him, says the soldier, and he runs out to a court that is in the back, from which he comes back with a bunch of branches of wild hawthorn, still flexible, because springtime keeps the branches relatively tender, whilst the long, sharp thorns are hard. With a dagger they remove leaves and buds. They bend the branches, forming a circle, and they place them on his poor head. But the cruel crown falls down on his neck. It does not fit. Make it narrower. Take it off. They take it off and scratch his cheeks, risking to blind him, and they tear off his hair in doing so. They make it smaller. Now it is too small, and although they press it down, driving the thorns into his head, it threatens to fall. They take it off once again, tearing off more of his hair. They adjust it again. It now fits. At the front there are 3 thorny cords. At the back, where the ends of the 3 branches interweave, there is a real knot of thorns that penetrate into the nape of his neck. Do you see how well you look? Natural bronze and real rubies. Look at yourself, O king, in my cuirass, says the inventor of the torture, scoffingly. A crown is not sufficient to make a king. purple and scepter are required. In the stable there is a cane, and in the sewer there is a red chlamys. Get them, Cornelius. And once they have them, they put the dirty red rag on Jesus' shoulders, and before putting the cane in his hands, they beat his head with it, bowing and greeting, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they roar with laughter. Jesus does not react. He lets them sit him on the throne, a tub turned upside down, certainly used to water horses. He lets them strike and scoff at him without ever uttering a word. He only looks at them, casting glances of such kindness and such atrocious sorrow that I cannot bear with them without feeling heartbroken. The soldiers stop sneering at him only when the harsh voice of a superior orders them to take the guilty prisoner to Pilate. Guilty of what? Jesus is taken back again to the entrance hall, which is now covered with a precious velarium because of the sun. He still has the crown, the chlamys, and the cane. Come forward, that I may show you to the people. Jesus, although exhausted, straightens himself up with dignity. Oh, he really is a king. Listen, Jews, here is the man. I have punished him, but now let him go. No, no, we want to see him. Out, that we may see the blasphemer. Bring him out, and make sure they do not take him. And as Jesus goes out into the lobby and is visible in the square formed by the soldiers, Pontius Pilate points to him with his hand, saying, "Here's the man, your king. Is that still not sufficient?" The sun in a sultry day is shining almost perpendicular, because it is between the 3rd and the 6th hour, and it lights up and makes eyes and faces conspicuous. Are those people human beings? No. They are rabid hyenas. They shout. They shake their fists. They want his death. Jesus is holding himself upright, and I assure you that he never had such a noble bearing as now, not even when he performed the most wonderful miracles. Nobility of sorrow, but so divine as to suffice to mark him with the name of God. But in order to say that name, it is necessary to be at least men, and Jerusalem has no men today, but only demons. Jesus looks round at the crowd, and in the sea of rancorous faces he looks for and finds some friendly faces. How many? Less than 20 friends among thousands of enemies, and he lowers his head, struck by such abandonment. A tear falls, and another, and another. The sight of his tears does not engender compassion, but gives rise to fiercer hatred. He is taken back to the hall. So, let him go, it is justice. No, death to him, crucify him. I will give you Barabbas. No, the Christ. In that case, take him yourselves, and crucify him by yourselves, because I find no fault in him to do that. He said that he is the Son of God. Our law inflicts death on whoever is guilty of such blasphemy. Pilate becomes pensive. He goes back in and sits on his little throne. He rests his forehead in his hands, and his hand, and his elbow on his knee, and scrutinizes Jesus. "Come near me," he says. Jesus goes to the foot of the platform. "Is it true? Tell me." Jesus is silent. "Where do you come from? Who is God?" "He is the All." "And then? What does the all mean? What is the all for one who is dying? You are mad. God does not exist. I do." Jesus is silent. He has let the great word drop, and then he envelops himself in silence. Pontius, Claudia Procula's freedwoman, asks permission to come in. She has a note for you. "Domine, women also now. Let her come in." A Roman woman comes in and kneels down, handing a waxed tablet. It must be the one with which Procula begs her husband not to condemn Jesus. The woman withdraws backwards while Pilate reads. "I am advised to avoid your being put to death. Is it true that you are more than a haruspex? You frighten me." Jesus is silent. Do you not know that I have the power to free you or to crucify you?" "You would have no power if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, he who handed me over to you is more guilty than you are." "Who is it? Your God?" "I fear." Jesus is silent. Pilate is on tenterhooks. He would like and he would not like to. He is afraid of God's punishment. He is afraid of Rome. He fears Judean revenges. For a moment he overcomes the fear of God. He goes to the front of the hall, and in a thundering voice he shouts, "He is not guilty!" If you say so, you are no friend of Caesar's. He who proclaims himself king is his enemy. You want to free the Nazarene. We will inform Caesar of that. Pilate is seized with the fear of man. So, you want him dead? Let it be so, but the blood of this just man is not to stain my hands. And having a basin brought to him, he washes his hands in the presence of the people, who appear to be seized with frenzy, while they shout, His blood on us! His blood be on us, and on our children! We are not afraid of him. Crucify him! Crucify him! Pontius Pilate goes back to his little throne, and he calls the centurion Longinus and a slave. He orders the slave to bring him a board on which he places a notice and has the words written on it, Jesus, Nazarene, King of the Jews. And he shows it to the people. No, not so, not King of the Jews, but that he said that he is the King of the Jews. Many of them shout so. What I have written, says Pilate severely. And standing upright, he stretches his hand forward with its palm turned down, and he orders, Let him go to the cross. Soldiers, go, prepare the cross. And he descends from his throne without even looking towards the uproarious crowd or at the wan, condemned man. He leaves the hall. Jesus is left in the middle of it, guarded by the soldiers, awaiting the cross. Friday, March 10th, March 1944. Jesus says, I want you to meditate on the point concerning my meetings with Pilate. John, who is the most accurate witness and narrator, as he was almost always present, or at least very close, relates how I was taken to the praetorium when I left Caiaphas's house, and he specifies early in the morning. In fact, you saw that it was daybreak. He also specified they, the Jews, did not enter in order not to be contaminated, and thus be able to eat the Passover. Being hypocritical as usual, they thought that it was dangerous to trample on the dust of a Gentile's house, as they might be contaminated, but they did not consider it a sin to kill an innocent. And with their spirits satisfied with the crime they had accomplished, they were able to enjoy their Passover even more. They have many followers, even nowadays. All those who do wrong internally, but externally profess respect for religion and love for God, are like them. Formulae, but not true religion. I regard them with disgust and disdain. As the Jews would not go into Pilate's house, Pilate came out to hear what the bawling crowd wanted, and experienced, as he was in governing and judging, at a glance he realized that not I, but that population, intoxicated with hatred, was guilty. By looking at each other, we read each other's hearts. I judged the man what he was. He judged me for what I was. I felt pity for him because he was weak, and he felt pity for me because I was innocent. He tried to save me from the very beginning. And as the right to administer justice with regard to criminals was remitted and reserved to Rome, he tried to save me by saying, Judge him according to your law. Hypocrites, for the second time, the Jews refused to condemn me. It is true that Rome had the right of justice, but when, for instance, Stephen was stoned, Rome still ruled over Jerusalem, and notwithstanding all that, they passed sentence and had the capital sentence executed, disregarding Rome. With regard to me, whom they hated and feared and did not love, they would not believe that I was the Messiah, but did not want to kill me materially in case I were. They acted in a different way and accused me of being an instigator against the power of Rome. You would say, a rebel, in order to get Rome to judge me. In their ill-famed court of justice, and several times in the 3 years of my ministry, they had accused me of being a blasphemer and false prophet, and as such I should have been stoned or killed in any way. But now, to avoid committing the crime materially, as by instinct they felt they would be punished for it, they made Rome do it, accusing me of being a criminal and a rebel. When the crowds are perverted, and the leaders have become devils, there is nothing easier than accusing an innocent to give vent to their thirst for ferocity and usurpation, and to get rid of those who are an obstacle and a judgment. We have gone back to those days. The world, after an incubation of perverted ideas, explodes now and again in such displays of perversion. Like a huge, pregnant woman, the crowd, after nourishing its monster in its womb with doctrines of wild beasts, gives birth to it so that it may devour, the best people first, and then itself. Pilate goes back into the praetorium and calls me near him, and he questions me. He had already heard people speak of me. Among his centurions there were some who repeated my name with grateful love, with tears in their eyes and smiles in their hearts, and who spoke of me as of a benefactor. In their reports to the praetor, when they were questioned about this prophet, who attracted the crowds to himself and preached a new doctrine which mentioned a strange kingdom, inconceivable to a heathen mind, they had always replied that I was a meek, kind man who did not seek the honors of the earth, and that I inculcated and practiced respect and obedience to those who are the authorities. More sincere than the Israelites, they saw and witnessed the truth. The previous Sunday, when his attention was attracted by the shouts of the crowd, he had leaned out of the window and he had seen a disarmed man passing by, riding a little donkey, and blessing, surrounded by children and women. He had realized that that man could certainly not be a danger to Rome. So he wants to know whether I am a king. In his ironic, pagan skepticism, he wanted to have a little laugh at that royalty that rides a donkey, that has barefooted children, smiling women, and common men as courtiers, at that royalty that for 3 years has preached that it has no interest in riches and power, and that speaks of no conquests but those of the spirit and the soul. What is the soul for a heathen? Not even his gods have souls, and can man have it? Also now this king, with no crown, with no palace, with no court, with no soldiers, repeats to him that his kingdom is not of this world, so much so that no minister and no army rises to defend their king and free him from his enemies. Pilate, sitting on his seat, scrutinizes me because I am an enigma to him. If he cleared his soul of human cares, of the pride of his office, of the error of heathenism, he would understand at once who I am. But how can light enter where too many things obstruct the openings preventing light from entering? It is always like that, my children, even now. How can God and his light enter where there is no room for them, and doors and windows are closed and defended by pride, by humanity, by vice, by usury, by so many guards at the service of Satan against God? Pilate cannot understand what my kingdom is, and what is more painful, he does not ask me to explain it to him. To my invitation to know the truth, he, the untamable heathen, replies, "What is the truth?" And with a shrug of his shoulders, he lets the matter drop. Oh, my children, oh, my Pilates of the present times, you also, like Pontius Pilate, let the most vital matters drop with a shrug of your shoulders. You consider them useless, old-fashioned things. What is the truth? Money? No. Women? No. Power? No. Physical health? No. Human glory? No. Then forget about it. It is not worth running after a chimera. Money, women, power, good health, comforts, honors are the real useful things that one must love and attain at all costs. That is how you reason. And worse than Esau, you barter eternal goods for coarse food that is harmful both to your physical health and to your eternal salvation. Why do you not persist in asking, what is the truth? It, the truth, asks for nothing but to be known in order to teach what it is. It is before you, as it was for Pilate, and looks at you with eyes full of suppliant love, imploring you, "Question me, I will teach you." Did you notice how I looked at Pilate? I look at all of you the same way. And if I look with serene love at those who love me and ask for my words, I cast glances of sorrowful love at those who do not love me, do not seek me, do not listen to me. But it is always love, because love is my nature. Pilate leaves me where I am, without asking more questions, and he goes towards the wicked people who speak in coarser voices and impose themselves through their violence. And he, a real wretch, listens to them, whilst he did not listen to me, and shrugging his shoulders, he declined my invitation to become acquainted with the truth. He listens to falsehood. Idolatry, whatever its form may be, is always inclined to venerate and accept falsehood, whatever it may be. And falsehood, when accepted by the weak, leads the weak to crime. And yet Pilate, on the threshold of crime, still wants to save me, and he tries twice. It is at this point that he sends me to Herod. He knows very well that the shrewd king, who keeps in with both Rome and his people, will act in such a way as not to damage Rome and not irritate the Jewish people. But like all weak people, he puts off for a little while the decision that he does not feel like taking, hoping that the plebeian rising will abate. I said, when you speak, say yes if you mean yes, no if you mean no. But he did not hear that, and if somebody repeated it to him, he shrugged his shoulders as usual. In order to succeed in the world, to have honors and profits, it is necessary to be able to make a no of a yes, and a yes of a no, according to what common sense, read human sense, advises. How many Pilates there are in the 20th century! Where are the Christian heroes who said yes, constantly yes, to the truth, and for the sake of the truth, and no, constantly no, to falsehood? Where are the heroes who are able to face danger and events with brave strength and to tranquil quickness, and do not postpone, because good is to be accomplished at once, and evil shunned at once, without buts and ifs? On my return from Herod, there's Pilate's fresh compromise, scourging. And what did he expect? Did he not know that the crowd is a wild beast that becomes merciless when it begins to see blood? But I had to be crushed to expiate your sins of the flesh, and I am crushed. There is not a shred of my body that has not been struck. I am the man of whom Isaiah speaks. And to the torture that had been ordered, there is added another that was not ordered, but was created by human cruelty, that of the thorns. Men, do you see your Savior, your King, crowned with sorrow, to free your heads of so many sins fermenting in them? Do you not consider the pain that my innocent head suffered to expiate on your behalf your sinful thoughts that are more and more dreadful and are transformed into deeds? You who feel offended even when there is no reason for feeling so, look at your offended King, and he is God, with his ironic mantle of torn purple, with a cane as his scepter and the crown of thorns. He is already dying, and they slap his face with their hands and with mockery. And you are not moved to pity. Like the Jews, you continue to show me your fists, shouting, "Away, we have not other God but Caesar." O idolaters, who do not worship God but yourselves, and those who are more overbearing among you. You do not want the Son of God. He gives you no help for your crimes. Satan is more obliging, so you want Satan. You are afraid of the Son of God, like Pilate. And when you feel him impend over you with his power, and stir within you with the voices of your consciences that reproach you in his name, like Pilate, you ask, "Who are you?" You know who I am. Also those who deny me know what and who I am. Do not lie. There are 20 centuries around me, and they illustrate who I am, and they make you acquainted with my miracles. Pilate is more excusable. You are not, as you have a heritage of 20 centuries of Christianity to support your faith or to inculcate it in you, but you will not hear of it. And yet I was more severe with Pilate than with you. I did not reply. I do speak to you, and even so I do not succeed in persuading you that it is I, and that you owe me adoration and obedience. Even now you accuse me of being my own ruin in you, because I do not listen to you. You say that you lose your faith because of that. Oh, liars! Where is your faith? Where is your love? When do you pray to me and live with love and faith? Are you great people? Remember that you are such because I allow it. Are you anonyms in the crowd? Remember that there is no other God but I. No one is greater than I am, and no one is ahead of me. So give me that cult of love that is due to me, and I will listen to you, because you will no longer be illegitimate children, but the sons of God. And here is the last attempt of Pilate to save my life, if it were possible to save it after the cruel, endless flagellation. He shows me to the crowd. Here is the man. I arouse human pity in him. He hopes in collective pity. But before the resisting harshness and the advancing threats, he is not capable of accomplishing a supernaturally just deed, and therefore a good one, saying, I am setting him free because he is innocent. You are guilty people, and if you do not disperse, you will become acquainted with the severity of Rome. That is what he should have said, had he been a just man, without taking into account the future detriment that would befall him. Pilate is a false good man. Longinus is good, because although he was less powerful than the praetor, and less defended in the middle of the street, and surrounded by few soldiers and a hostile multitude, he dares to defend me, help me, grant me a rest, to be consoled by the pious women, be assisted by the man from Cyrene, and finally to have my mother at the foot of the cross. He was a hero of justice, and so he became a hero of Christ. Be aware, O men, who worry only about your material welfare, that God intervenes also in its favor when he sees you behave faithfully towards justice, which is emanation of God. I always reward those who act righteously. I defend those who defend me. I love them and succor them. I am always the one who said, He who gives a glass of water in my name will be rewarded. To those who give me love, the water that quenches the thirst of my lips, of the divine martyr, I give myself, that is, protection and blessings.